In the middle of a live national broadcast, a powerful elder minister rose from his seat and publicly mocked Captain Trareay, calling him a child pretending to lead grown men. Security tightened their grip on their holsters, the packed hall fell silent. But Traoray's response was not anger. It was a move that stunned an entire nation, and exposed a secret buried for more than 15 years. The heat inside the town hall of Bobo Dioulasso was unbearable, not because of the weather, but because of the tension. Outside, thousands of citizens crowded the streets, men and women who were exhausted by rising food prices, exhausted by fear, exhausted by watching politicians grow rich while their children grew thinner. Inside the hall sat the old political class of the Burkina state, men who had survived coups, presidents, and revolutions, men who wore imported suits and checked gold watches while pretending to listen, men who believed power was permanent and accountability optional. At the center of the room stood Trareay, young, calm, wearing military fatigues and a red beret instead of silk and cufflinks. He did not look like a politician, that he did not sound like one either. There were no grand speeches, no polished rhetoric, only numbers, budgets, and a message that made the room uncomfortable. "We cannot ask our people to suffer," Traoré said, his voice steady, "while we live in luxury. No more first-class flights, no more inflated allowances. No more hidden bonuses. The money," he said, "belonged to the people." Silence followed, not respect, not agreement, but resentment. The silence shattered with the scrape of a chair. From the front row, a senior minister stood up. He was in his mid-60s, wealthy, untouchable. A survivor of every administration that came before. His name carried weight, his past carried shadows. He adjusted his silk tie, glanced at the cameras, and smiled. "Excuse me, Captain," he said loudly, "I think you are confused." Trareay stopped speaking. He did not interrupt. He did not raise his voice. "Go on," he said. The minister chuckled. "You speak of sacrifice," the man continued, "you speak of cutting benefits. Listen, son. I was signing laws before you were born." The room stiffened. "You are a soldier," the minister said. "You understand mud and rifles, you do not understand governance." Then he crossed a line. "You are a temporary guest in this palace. Go back to the barracks. Let real men handle the nation's finances." Gasps rippled through the hall. In the Burkina state, elders were respected, but the leader was the law. Security moved instinctively, hands hovered near weapons. Everyone expected the same outcome. An arrest. An explosion. A show of force. That was how power had always been displayed. But Traoré raised his hand. "Stop." He stepped away from the podium. Boots echoed softly against the wooden floor as he descended the steps, slowly, deliberately. He walked straight toward the man who had just humiliated him on live television. The minister's smile faded. Trareay stopped less than a meter away. He said nothing. The silence stretched. Then Traoré reached into his pocket. Not for a weapon, for paper. A small, folded document, worn at the edges. He unfolded it carefully, never breaking eye contact. "You said you understand governance," Traoré said quietly, "so tell me, do you recognize this signature?" The minister leaned forward, and froze. Color drained from his face, his confidence collapsed in real time. Trareay turned to the cameras. "This," he said, holding the paper up, "is not a political disagreement." He paused. "This is a crime scene." The document was an authorization. A transfer order. 500 million CFA francs. For the construction of a modern maternity hospital in Kaya. A hospital that had never been built. For 15 years, Women in Kaya gave birth on dirt floors, babies died without incubators. Midwives worked with empty hands. And the money? Gone. The minister opened his mouth, nothing came out. The hall erupted, shouts, phones raised, journalists typing furiously. The minister tried to recover. "This is fake," he shouted, "a political stunt. I signed thousands of documents." No one defended him. No one met his eyes. Trareay waited for the noise to settle. Then he spoke again. "You say you do not remember," he said calmly. "That is convenient. Liars often forget when they are caught." He turned toward the back of the hall. "Open the doors." The heavy doors creaked apart. 2 security officers entered. Between them walked a nervous man in a worn suit, clutching a briefcase like a lifeline. The minister saw him, and nearly collapsed. The man's name was Sadhu, an accountant, the one who processed the transfer. "I kept copies," Sadhu said, his hands shaking. "Everything." He opened the briefcase. Documents spilled out, emails, fake invoices, bank confirmations. The theft was not isolated. Roads, schools, hospitals. All stripped bare. The crowd exploded. But Traoré was not finished. "Money leaves a trail," he said. And that trail led somewhere darker. As security moved to detain the minister, the man snapped. He lunged forward. Not at Trareay. At the witness. Papers flew, people screamed. Before anyone could react, Traoré moved. Fast, controlled. He caught the minister's wrist mid-air. No shouting. No weapon, just strength. "Enough," Trareay said. The minister was dragged away. Cheers erupted. It felt like victory, like the end. But Traoré's expression did not change. Because in his hands, beneath the scattered papers, was something far more dangerous. A black ledger. And a name that would change everything. The applause still echoed through the hall as the disgraced minister was dragged away. People hugged, some cried, some laughed in disbelief. It felt like justice. But Trareay did not smile. He crouched down beside Sadhu, the accountant, who was on his knees gathering scattered documents with trembling hands. "Are you hurt?" Traoré asked quietly. "No, Captain," Sadhu replied, then he hesitated. But, he was right. Traoré stiffened. "Right about what?" Sadhu glanced around the hall. The cameras were still rolling, microphones everywhere. Slowly, he unlatched the briefcase again. This time, he lifted the lining. A false bottom. Hidden beneath it lay 2 items. A USB drive. And a thick black ledger. The air around them changed. "This," Sadhu whispered, "is why I couldn't sleep." Trareay took the ledger. It was heavy, old, handled often. "This isn't just about stolen money," Sadhu continued. "The minister was a middleman." Traoré opened the book. Columns of numbers, dates, villages. Then words that made his stomach tighten. Payments, routes, code names. "Where did the rest of the money go?" Traoré asked. Sadhu swallowed. "To the border," he said, "to armed groups." Trareay's jaw clenched. "They paid rebels," Sadhu continued, his voice breaking, "to attack villages that refused to vote for them. To create fear. To control elections. This was no longer corruption. This was betrayal, murder." Traoré turned the page. And stopped. At the top of the list was a name he knew. A name he trusted. A name belonging to a man standing inside the hall. The noise of the crowd faded. Applause became distant. All Trareay could hear was his own heartbeat. He closed the ledger slowly. Then he looked up. Not at the crowd, not at the cameras. At the VIP security section. The lieutenant colonel. His mentor. The man who had taught him how to survive in the bush, how to command troops, how to keep calm under fire. The man who had stood beside him the night he took power. The colonel was leaning against the wall, relaxed, chewing on a toothpick, watching. Something cold moved through Traoré's chest. He handed the ledger back to Sadu. "Stay here," he said. Then Traoré stepped off the stage. Again. But this time, he did not walk toward the crowd. He walked toward the shadows. Toward his own security detail. Soldiers snapped to attention as he approached. All except the colonel. "Well played, Mr. President," the man said with a lazy grin. "You humiliated the senior minister, the people loved it." Trareay stopped less than 2 meters away. The scent of expensive cologne reached him, too expensive for a soldier's salary. "Sadu gave me the ledger," Traoré said softly. The colonel's smile held. "Ledger?" He chuckled. "That accountant is confused, these are fairy tales." "It lists who stole public funds," Traoré replied, "and who paid violent networks in the north." The colonel stopped chewing. His eyes flickered. "Careful," he said, "that's a serious accusation." Trareay raised the black book. "Your name is on page 42, he said. "You authorized a payment 3 days before the northern attack." The silence between them crackled. Behind them, the crowd was still celebrating, unaware that the real danger stood 10 feet from their leader. The colonel's mask slipped. The mentor vanished. A predator remained. "You think arresting one old man changes anything?" he hissed. "The system is bigger than you. We are the system." Traoré met his gaze. "Then I'll build a new one." "Hand over your weapon," Trareay said, "it's over." The colonel laughed. "No," he said, "it's just starting." He moved. Fast. His hand went to his pistol. But he didn't aim at Traoré. He grabbed the nearest person. A young female journalist standing near the stage. She gasped as he wrapped an arm around her neck and jammed the gun against her temple. "Back off," he screamed, "everyone back off or she dies." The hall erupted into chaos. People screamed, chairs toppled. Security raised rifles, then froze. They couldn't shoot. She was in the way. "Put the guns down." The colonel shouted, dragging the trembling journalist toward the exit. Trareay raised his hand. "Stop." He looked at the girl. Her name was Amina, barely 22. Her hands shook violently, tears streaked her face. Then Traoré looked at the colonel. The man he once called brother. If the colonel escaped, he would vanish into the bush, rally loyal officers, ignite a civil war. But if Traoré ordered fire, an innocent girl would die on live television. The choice was impossible. And the colonel knew it. He smiled. "Lower your weapons," Trareay commanded. The soldiers hesitated. "I said lower them." "Now." Reluctantly, rifles lowered. The colonel frowned. "What are you doing?" he snarled. Traoré stepped forward, hands raised. "No gun." "No tricks," he said calmly, "just a deal." He walked toward the colonel like he was crossing a quiet street. "You're holding a journalist," Traoré said. "She's worth nothing to you." The colonel tightened his grip. "If you kill her," Traoré continued, you die here. My men will tear you apart. Another step closer. But imagine if you had a better hostage. The room went silent. Take me, Trareay said. I'm the one you want. That I have the codes. That I can get you a helicopter, safe passage. The colonel hesitated. Greed flickered in his eyes. Traoré unbuckled his pistol belt. That it hit the floor with a heavy clang. No weapon, he said, just me. For a moment, time slowed. Then the colonel shoved Amina away. She collapsed to the floor. And in the same motion, he swung the gun toward Traoré's chest. You're a fool, he shouted. He pulled the trigger. But Traoré was already moving. He slapped the barrel upward. The shot slammed into the ceiling, plaster rained down. Trareay drove his shoulder into the colonel's chest. They crashed to the floor. In seconds, the weapon was gone. Pinned. The traitor's own gun pressed against his spine. It's over, Traoré whispered. Guards swarmed. Handcuffs snapped shut. Amina was dragged to safety. Alive. The hall erupted. Applause thundered. But the colonel laughed. Low, mocking. You think you won? He spat. You should check your phone. An aide rushed toward Traoré, pale. Sir, he stammered, holding out a satellite phone, we lost contact with the capital. Static. No signal. Then the screens inside the hall flickered. A masked general appeared. Captain Traore has been arrested for treason, the voice declared. A transitional council has assumed control. It was a digital takeover. No tanks. No bullets, just silence. Internet down, television dark, radio quiet. Panic spread. Units mobilized, believing the leader was gone. The lie was already working. The colonel laughed louder as he was dragged away. The countdown started 10 minutes ago, he shouted, you're too late. Trareay stared at the dead phone. Then he looked at Amina. Does your camera still work? Yes, she said, but there's no signal. Traoré nodded. We don't need towers, he said, we need the internet. The hall felt smaller now, claustrophobic. People whispered in panic. Phones showed nothing but loading screens, messages failed, calls dropped. The capital was silent. That silence was the weapon. Outside the town hall, convoys loyal to the colonel's network were already moving. Orders had been issued, checkpoints activated, the palace surrounded. They did not need to kill Traoré. They only needed the country to believe he was gone. Belief would do the rest. An aide leaned close. Sir, we should move you now, he urged, we have a safe house in the mountains. We can wait this out. Trareay shook his head. If I disappear, he said, the lie becomes truth. Another aide whispered urgently. They control the broadcast networks. We can't speak to the nation. Traoré turned. Then we won't use their networks. He looked at Amina. Can you stream if we find a signal? She nodded slowly. Yes, if there's even a weak connection. Traoré made his decision. Get in the truck. They did not flee to a bunker. They drove out of the city. Past darkened streets, past confused citizens staring at silent phones, past soldiers waiting for orders that never came. They climbed a rough dirt road toward a forgotten hill. At its peak stood an old cellular tower. Neglected, overlooked. The main lines had been cut, but not this one. The wind whipped violently as the truck stopped. Headlights illuminated dust and stone. There was no stage.no flag.no guards information. Just Trareay standing in the open night. Red beret pulled low, face lit by a trembling phone screen. Amina raised her phone. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. Traoré looked into the camera. "People of the Burkina State." His voice was calm, steady. "Do not be afraid," he said. "I am here, that I am free, and I am coming home." The stream began with a few hundred viewers. Then thousands. Then millions. WhatsApp groups lit up, screenshots spread, clips were forwarded again and again. In the capital city, people stared at their phones in disbelief. The leader was alive. He was not hiding, that he was not captured. The lie shattered. In the capital city, armored vehicles rolled toward the palace, then they slowed. Not because of resistance, because of people. Citizens poured into the streets, men, women, students, market vendors. They held up their phones, playing the live stream. They surrounded vehicles, blocked roads, encircled the national broadcaster. The soldiers hesitated. They looked at the screens, then at the crowd, then at their commanders. They realized they had been lied to. One by one, rifles lowered, engines shut off. The takeover collapsed, not under fire, but under truth. By dawn, it was over. The next morning, Trareay's convoy entered the capital. Crowds lined the streets, cheers thundered, hands reached out. But Traoré did not wave. He did not stop. He went straight to the office. Work waited. The building looked different. Gone were the imported chandeliers, gone were the ornate furnishings. Simple wooden chairs filled the room, the air conditioning was off. Traoré walked in carrying files. He looked thinner, tired, but focused. Amina sat across from him, camera ready. "Sir," she said, "the world calls you a hero. How does it feel to be powerful?" Traoré paused. He looked out the window at the city below. He thought of the senior minister, who believed power was money. He thought of the colonel, who believed power was a gun. "Power is not a feeling," he said quietly, "it's a burden." "When I disarmed him," Trareay continued, "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was doing my job." He opened a folder. "The hospital in Kaya is being built," he said. "The money is back in the treasury. That is the only power I care about." He picked up his pen. "I have a meeting with farmers from the north," Traoré added. "They need water, not speeches." Amina smiled and turned off the camera. She had her story. The disgraced officials sat alone, watching the news. They saw a country moving forward without them. They had learned too late. You can steal money, you can steal land. But you cannot steal the spirit of a people once they have found their voice. Traoré did not just survive a trap. He dismantled it. So no one else would ever fall into it again. History is full of leaders who faced impossible odds. Some ran, some compromised, some disappeared. Others stood. If you think this story was intense, wait until you hear what happened when a humble teacher challenged a warlord in the mountains of a neighboring state. A pen against 1,000 rifles. That story is next. The cameras were gone, the crowds had dispersed, the chants faded into memory. Inside a small holding facility on the outskirts of the capital, two men sat alone. One stared at a concrete wall, replaying the moment his world collapsed. The other lay on a narrow cot, eyes open, silent, realizing too late that the system he helped build had devoured him. They had believed power was permanent. They were wrong. Across the city, the nation moved forward. Slowly, carefully, honestly. No parades. No triumphal speeches. Just work. In Kaya, bulldozers broke ground where weeds once grew. Concrete foundations replaced empty dirt. For the first time in years, midwives spoke of incubators, not graves. In government offices, budgets were rewritten, allowances vanished, luxury faded. Not because of fear, but because the rules had changed. Trareay never claimed victory. He never called himself a savior. When asked why he refused to flee during the crisis, his answer was simple. If I hide, he said, the lie wins. Power, to him, was not applause. It was responsibility. Responsibility to stand still when running would be easier, responsibility to tell the truth when silence would be safer, responsibility to choose people over position. History often celebrates strong men. But nations are not saved by strength alone. They are saved by restraint. By clarity. By leaders willing to carry the weight without passing it on. That night on the hill, with no guards, no weapons, and no certainty of survival, Traoré made a choice. He trusted the people. And the people answered. This was not the story of a perfect man. It was the story of a moment, when fear lost, when truth traveled faster than lies, and when a nation remembered its own voice. Because the most dangerous thing to any corrupt system is not rebellion. It is courage combined with patience. And as the Burkina state continues its long, difficult road forward, one lesson remains clear. You can steal money, you can steal land, you can steal time. But you cannot steal the future once the people decide to claim it. If this story moved you, share it. If it made you think, comment below. Where are you watching from, and what does real leadership mean to you? Subscribe to Africa Vanguard for more untold stories of power, restraint, and the quiet moments that change history. Because the next chapter is already being written, and it will not ask for permission.